So hi, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on sustainability standards and GHG verification under the Singapore's Carbon Pricing Act. Right. My name is Derek. I will be your host and speaker for today, right? And just want to extend a quick thanks to everyone that's joining us this morning. Right. And just quickly go through today's agenda, right? So we will talk about the requirements, right, under the NEA Greenhouse Gas Verification and the Carbon Pricing Act of Singapore. Right. We will discuss industry trends and best practices, right, and also some steps you can take towards decarbonizing your operations, right. And we'll also share a bit more about BSI Sustainability Portfolio. And also, we will open up, the floor for Q&A session later. Right. So once again, my name is Derek. I lead Sustainability Services Portfolio at BSI Singapore, and I'm joined by my colleague today, Dr. Yuan Zhe Li, right, who's the Client Manager, as well as the Scheme Manager for Sustainability in ASEAN. Right. So we'll kick off today's webinar, right, just to share a bit more about why should we talk about sustainability, right? And why all of us are gathered in this room today. Right. So carbon neutrality, right, is the most certain goal of human society. Right. It's a long-lasting journey that we're taking, right? We're looking at the next 30 to 50 years, and it attracts the largest investment in human history. It's going to be a game changer for businesses, right? And we see now that even new businesses are being created, right, to support industries towards achieving this goal. We're also seeing more stricter legal and compliance requirements coming in, right? And we're also seeing the supply chains will be restructured. Right? International competitiveness and dynamics will take a new shape. And we are right now in the midst of an energy transformation. Right? And sustainability will also have implications on your company's reputation. Right, and climate change is real, and today we are already feeling the effects and consequences of climate change, right? And this calls for urgent need, for companies around the world, to work together towards decarbonization and eventually towards carbon neutrality and net zero. Right. So, these are just some of the examples, some of the incidences we're seeing in the world today as a result, of climate change. And sustainability is really, right, the most pressing issue that we face today. Right, I'll just quote Barack Obama, right? We are the first generation to fully face the impact of climate change, and we are the last generation that can do something about it. Right, so BSI, we did, a sustainability research, right? And we poked some clients, right? Poked some people, and the importance to sustainability, right, at least to BSI clients, right, more than 98% has responded that climate change sustainability is an important issue to them. Right, to customers of BSI clients, we're also seeing the same, 98%, and to society as at large, overwhelming 95%. Right, and more than 80% of BSI clients also believe that a focus on sustainability will protect their businesses for the long term. Right, and next I will share, some of the insights and trends we're seeing in 2024 and beyond in the area of sustainability. We're seeing more corporate commitments coming in, right? So these are just some of the examples, of global organizations, global brands committing towards certain targets. Just take a few examples from the list here. So Apple is looking to have their supply chain be carbon neutral by 2030. Right? Amazon, right, half of transportation to achieve net zero by 2030. Unilever, right, carbon neutral, including operations and supply chain by 2039. Right, and more than 80% of top global 250 companies reported on TCFD in 2022. Right, we're seeing life cycle management, right, and product carbon footprint coming to focus. So, I think you're gonna know what I'm talking about. Right. So Apple Watch, right, made the news, pretty recently, where Apple launched the first carbon neutral product. Right. So Apple Watch really is a milestone, right, for Apple, right, in making their products carbon neutral by 2030. Right. So they're achieving this through cutting, emissions through innovations in material, clean energy, and low carbon shipping, right? And they are also investing in nature-based projects to offset, whatever that they're unable to reduce. We're also seeing trends in circular economy and material recycling. So, this is really just a quick example of NTT recycling overhead metal cables, underground metal cables, and also overhead optical cables, right? So circular economy definitely will come into focus, and it's going to be crucial for organizations to decarbonize as well as to recover material that is able to be recycled. We are also seeing trends in supply chain management, right? So when we talk about sustainable development in supply chains, that's the ultimate performance target that's going to be supported by greening of the supply chains, right? Certain social standards in supply chains, right, as well as supply chains decarbonizing in order to become more competitive. So of course, supply chain scope 3 emissions definitely has a part to play in organizations' decarbonization journey, right? So it really starts from a company's culture, governance programs, transparency and collaboration across the supply chain, as well as measuring, performance in decarbonization of supply chain. And I will share one last trend. So we are seeing more voices, right, coming out against greenwashing, right? So I just share a few examples of news articles that was recently published. So I think some of us may recall, there was a Guardian article published last year, right, calling out Vera and calling out, bringing into question the quality of Vera's carbon credits, carbon offsets, right? A big organization like Nestle, right, due to calls against greenwashing, they also decided to walk away from carbon neutral claims, right, and instead invest into cutting its greenhouse gas emissions, right? And even the UN environment, has something to say against, just using carbon offsets in order to decarbonize an organization, right? So we are seeing, more and more cases, right, making the news, right, and more people calling out against greenwashing. And really the question today is how can standards, right, international standards, address the gap, right? And I'll just show a quick example, right? So when we talk about sustainability, of course, we're not just talking about carbon, right? Because sustainability really is about ESG, right? We look at the environment aspect of sustainability and the social aspect of sustainability, as well as governance, right? So only organizations that take into account, ESG, right? And, it's really a broad topic, right? So looking at environment, we are looking, for example, not just greenhouse gas management, we are looking at how energy and resources are being managed, water is being managed. When we look at the social aspect of sustainability, we look at social responsibility, we look at health and safety management, labor rights, modern slavery, supply chain management, right? And of course, governance definitely has a part to play in an organization's sustainability journey. So corporate governance, how does an organization govern sustainability? How does organization manage risk, bribery, and corruption? Right, so really, this is a non-exhaustive list of ESG topics, and this is really just to inform the audience today that there are already standards, right, that's being published that you're able to use in order to improve your organization's ESG performance. And why use standards and why what are some of the benefits, an organization can gain by adopting standards? Because standards is really international best practice, right? So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? You're able to take a standard, implement it within your organization, right, and receive the benefits. Right, so the benefits of international standards adoption definitely helps to combat climate change, right, especially standards that are closely linked to sustainability. Right, you're able to enhance your sustainability credentials and increase your organizational resilience. Right, you're able to gain a competitive edge by offering customers greener products and services, right, and even identify opportunities to cut costs and improve organizational P&L through better waste, energy, water management, for example, and align your organization, right, to the UN SDGs, right, Sustainable Development Goals. Right, and just to share a quick survey, BSI did few years ago, right, quite a few years ago, where we polled more than 200,000 customers, right, over a 6-year period. And what motivates them to adopt certification, go for certification for their business, right? So the top 3 reasons, that they give us is, right, certification definitely helps to inspire trust in your business, helps to improve your products and services, as well as to help you comply with regulations in the markets that you operate in, right? And really the key objective of certification is to ensure that your business is trusted and committed to environmental and sustainability goals, and that you have been validated by an independent third party. Right, and this is how BSI, we can share, we can support you on your sustainability journey. Right, so BSI, as an organization, as a standards institution, we do a lot of creation of awareness, right, thought leadership. So there are webinars available, right, like the one we're in now. BSI also regularly hosts workshops, engage with government and industry bodies, right, as to really share that standards are available to help organizations, right, and to create awareness that standards are available, and organizations should use standards. We're able to provide training services and training support in order to help organizations start adopting standards for their business. Share more on that later. Right, and for organizations, right, who have been adopting standards for their business, they're able to get their business certified. Right, so I'll just share 2 examples of certifiable standards. So ISO 14000 Environmental Management System and ISO 50001 Energy Management System certification. So BSI, as an accredited certification body, we are able to audit your organization, right, in order to see if you meet the standards requirements and certify your organization. Additionally, we're able to provide assurance, right, for your organization's sustainability report, as well as to verify your organization's carbon footprint, as well as to verify that your organization is either committed or has achieved carbon neutrality. Right, so there are many areas where BSI is already supporting organizations and can support yours as well. And just to share a quick roadmap on a ISO certification, and what are typical timelines that you're looking at to get your organization certified. Right, so BSI, we can start of course at the start of every standards adoption journey. We do recommend training with BSI, right? Understand what are the requirements of the standard, how to conduct an internal audit, right? Then our clients take that knowledge back to the organization to implement the standards requirements within their organizations, right? So that could involve drafting of documentation and processes, right? Internal training and awareness building, implementation of the ISO system, measuring of the ISO system's performance, as well as preparing for the certification audit, right, through conducting an internal audit, management review, as well as system documentation. Right, and of course, when it comes to certification, BSI can start to support by conducting a gap assessment, right? Of course, this is optional, but it's recommended for organizations that starting to adopt standards. Right, then there will be a stage 1 audit, which is documentation audit, stage 2 audit, which is on-site audit, right? So during the assessment process, BSI auditors will assess an organizations if they meet the requirements of ISO 14,000 or ISO 50,000 for this example. And once auditors they deem that you are complying to the standards, right? BSI will then issue a certificate, and we will issue a certification mark to the organization, right? So this is just a few examples, right, of ISO 14,000 and 50,000 certification marks that BSI issue. Then, 1 year later, we will conduct an annual surveillance audit in order to ensure that you're continuing to implement the management system, right, at your organization. Right. So this is just a quick example, right, of a roadmap towards certification for your organization. Right. And when we talk about training with BSI, our courses and qualifications are really designed to help forward-thinking organizations and individuals, right, such as yourself, progress towards a more sustainable and resilient future by providing high-quality learning in the most effective way. So, many people come to BSI, right, for training, and you're able to turn our auditors and tutors' expertise into yours. Right. And speaking of expertise, right, so BSI, we really do have deep and broad areas of expertise, whether it comes to quality management, organizational governance, risk and compliance type of training, health, safety and well-being, digital trust and information resilience, as well as sustainability. So we do provide a wide range of training courses, right, depending on the topic. And yeah, we also provide sector-specific training as well to specific sectors. Right, and BSI, we are able to offer auditor qualifications. So, that there is a qualification pathway in order to obtain a BSI qualification for yourself, right? So you're able to demonstrate that, you are qualified BSI to conduct an internal audit, or you're qualified by BSI to be a lead auditor. Right, and for those of you who are managing greenhouse gases, right, calculation, verification of greenhouse gas within your organization, we do offer subject qualification, right, in order to demonstrate your expertise in greenhouse gas management. Right, and I will quickly end off my session by just sharing a bit more about BSI and what we do, right? The BSI, we are a purpose-led organization, right? We've been around really long time, more than 120 years, and we are incorporated by the Royal Charter, right? So that means that BSI, right, we are not for distributed profit, and we really reinvest in the profits back into society in order to develop and publish standards, and as well as to fund BSI's growth, right? We are trusted catalyst for change, right? Organizations, regulators trust BSI, right, to come up with best practice standards and regulatory frameworks, right? When we help clients, solve today's most pressing problems by providing advice on best practice standards, right, and forward-thinking views in order to help them meet regulatory requirements, right? To help organizations on, supporting them in sustainable growth, right? Grow sustainability through the use of standards, as well as accelerate their digital trust and transformation, right? Again, using standards. Right, so just a quick snapshot of BSI and where we are globally, right? So we operate out of 87 offices in more than 31 countries, right? And we serve more than 84,000 clients today in more than 193 countries, right? And our clients really range from globally recognized brands to small local businesses. And we support sustainable growth. Right. So these are 8 priority sectors that BSI works with, right? So it enables us to transfer our deep expertise, right? And we deliver actionable, insight-based outcomes to help our clients generate greater trust, right, to their consumers, to their stakeholders. right? And these are just four of the key pillars that BSI works with organizations right across the area of sustainability, digital trust transformation, health, safety, well-being, and sustainable growth, right? So you're able to tap into BSI's expertise in these four areas, right, which is critical for businesses to run today. And BSI as an organization, right, as a standards organization, we do have the expertise and track record in creating standards, right? So in fact, BSI, we did shape the world's first sustainability standards. And BSI today also continues to act as the UK's national standards body. And we are also one of the founding members of ISO, right, the International Standards Organization, right? And we have more than 120 years of standard setting experience. Right, and so just to give a quick example, right, on shaping the world's first standard on carbon neutrality, right? So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at this standard, ISO 14068-1, of course, I would encourage the audience to have a look at this standard, right? Because it is the world's first standard on carbon neutrality, and it originated from a BSI published PAS 2060 standard. Right? So this is a really new standard, right? And again, world's first on carbon neutrality. Right, and standards definitely do have a link to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and of course, selecting the right partner is critical for your organization to accelerate your progress. Right, so SDG 17, right, which is Partnership for the Goals, is really at the heart of BSI's mandate. We partner with our clients, we partner with industries and stakeholders, right, in order to help them improve, right, and become more sustainable. Right. And thank you. So I hope this introduction helps. And now I'd like to hand over the time to my colleague, Dr. Yuan Zeli, to share a bit more about the Carbon Pricing Act and how organizations can take steps towards decarbonization. Yuan Zeli, please.
Okay, thank you everyone. So thank you for spare time to take and to understand more from BSI. So beginning, I will have a short introduction about myself. So I study my PhD in material science and engineering. And currently I work as the ISO 14064 is regarding for the sustainability like greenhouse gas, quantification things like verification and the BSI. And now we are also going to have such a transfer from the PAS 2060 to the ISO 14068 regarding for carbon neutral verification as well. And also from the NEA-wise, I also become the accredited complex sector expert for the sector 3, which is semiconductor. And also I'm the ADB endorsed, like qualified endorser for some of the REG decarbonization project as well. So if you have any interest in my publications recently about the carbon neutral or like the carbon tax issue, you also can just try to do some Google Scholar search. Yeah, you can take a refer from there as well. So actually today I will just trying to cover three aspects. So first we'll still beginning with the Singapore regulation and the Carbon Pricing Act, then coming with the semiconductor industry. So it's not only for semiconductor, it's also for its upstream and downstream, the whole life cycle, like different supply chain as well. And also last, I will just do some quick sharing about the decarbonization projects, which tackle the GHG emissions. So first, I will just have a general call. I mean, it's quite a follow-up from what Derek just mentioned, right? So what a year we had in 2023. I think everyone may feel about like the hottest year since the record began. And also the temperature of the globe is very high, right? And also it's even above the pre-industrial level. And also recently, even you are in China, right? You can see some flood and also natural disaster everywhere. And you can see from the right side, the temperatures keep going up. Things 20, I think 200, yeah, it's very hot. And after that, you can see some of the pressing regulatory environment. So which means there are different regulation or acts have been released from different countries or the United Nations as well, such as like carbon border adjustment, sustainable finance disclosure, so on and so forth, right? So this is what we can see from the market and from different perspective or different stakeholders. And continue will be some carbon neutrality is being redefined. For example, like in BSI, we have the past 2060 is in 2014. But actually in the last year, in the November, we release or we help or we contribute for ISO 14068, which is also talking about carbon neutrality for the release as well. Then some viable markets for product carbon footprint, as just quick introduced by Derek, is about like Apple Watch, Lenovo, like ThinkBook, so on and so far, right? So you can see more and more like carbon neutral products from the market. I mean, I think starting from the previous years, yeah. Then follow-up will be some concept of carbon pricing. Actually, in the EU, they adopt such a carbon pricing in the very beginning. But follow-up will be like Singapore. In the 2019, we do some release of Carbon Pricing Act as well. So actually, the carbon pricing is just approach that attach the price to greenhouse gas emissions and also to encourage the polluters to reduce their emission in a cost-effective way. So it's also raising the market pressure for the environment accountability as well. So going to the first part of the Singapore Regulation and Carbon Pricing Act. So what is that? I think mostly, especially for the like manufacturing side, you heard about that, right? So comparing with Singapore and China, so China is actually in the left, but Singapore is in the right. So because we are lack of any like resources and also water and gas, whatever, so means that Singapore is now very critically insufficient in different resource, like natural resource, and also is a high sincere in the GHG control or greenhouse gas control. So what is the concept of carbon pricing? I just trying to explain a little bit, but now we just more focusing on what the carbon pricing actually can do. Is actually we like consider by economics that as a single most effective way to reduce the GHG emission. It has the strength of carbon like pricing to have its flexibility to control the price, to have some revenue, and then to adopt this money into some technology neutral or development, and then can scale up to more scalability as well to meet the emission target. So the global view of carbon pricing mechanism is also quickly goes through from here. So it means like there are different understanding or different concern from different parties or different countries. And also beginning from EU now is being adapted from most of the countries and into different schemes. And also the role of the carbon pricing in its price, as you can see from Singapore now, is still far from the international organization standard, which is set as like $107 in 2030. So it means like the price will still going up. And also because of international development, economic like competitiveness, and also some ability to meet the emission goals. So this price actually will be increased little by. And also for the overview of Singapore carbon price, so nowadays you are paying is 5 Sing dollar, but in the next year we are going up to 25 Sing dollar. And also in the Singapore we got taxable facilities and also reportable facilities. We got two thresholds. One is 25K tons of CO2 equivalent. Another one will be 2,000. So above 25K, you definitely will need to pay the carbon tax to the NEA or to our government, right? And also the coverage of reckonable GHG, I think more or less you heard is the CO2, stage 4. But actually for the N2O or any like HFC or PFC and even SF6 is also considered as one of the reckonable GHG emission, means it's chargeable. So what is the comparison in between the Singapore like Carbon Pricing Act and also ISO 14064? I think this table will give you a very clear insight of view of that, because for ISO 14064 is definitely cover what is the direct GHG emissions and indirect GHG emissions. So indirect may cover about the energy and also like other indirect like business travel and also like waste management, so on and so forth, right? Actually, in Singapore, we only cover the scope 1, which means the direct emission from the CO2, the 7 gases. So the others, actually, if you see your electricity bill regarding for the GHG indirect emission of the energy, is already stated in your electricity bill. Yeah. So it means like still Singapore is more paying attention to the scope 1 emissions from there. So then we go to the semiconductor industry, like more about sharing the best practice and trend impact on organization of the carbon price. So because just now I share what is the reckonable and non-reckonable, so then you are much more clear about what is the part that we need to pay the most attention to. Means like for the scope 1 emissions, like the 7 gases, is the part we need to show our concern and to try to do some decarbonization project from there. So other than that, actually, I share more about the industrial engagement of the Carbon Pricing Act in Singapore. Is we differentiate the complete the instruction or like the industrial sector into 3. So complex sector 1 is petroleum and natural gas. Complex sector 2 is chemical and chemical engineering. Complex sector 3 is the semiconductor. But other than these 3 complex sector, we all call it like non-complex sector. So, but as long as your GHG emission is above the 25 kilotons of CO2 equivalent, you still need to pay, although you are not falling into these 3 complex sector. This is a part of it. And other than that is some company are consider about whether we can do some like offset, right? You can buy some carbon credit to offset emissions. But actually in Singapore, it's only allowed like 5%. But I mean, the money you need to pay your carbon tax is still based on the amount, the GHG emission amount, exclude any carbon offset or carbon credit. So this is a portion I think some of the companies asking, right? And also there are some challenge because of carbon tax, for example, like tree risk, operational unities, and also for some cost transfer effectives. These are the things that when you pay a carbon tax or your company is going to pay such a carbon tax, you need to consider about that. And also here, just quickly go through our timelines because we go through the COVID time. So the implementation actually for the carbon tax is being postponed a little bit. So it's actually starting from 2023. It's charged the money for the year 2022 emissions. Yeah, and also as the time fly by, right? As I mentioned, in this year we will pay $5 and this is the last year for $5. So next year, 2025, we need to pay 25 Sing dollar per ton for 2024. So it's like 5 times payment. So I think most like company are taking some actions, right, to do some decarbonization as well. Then I think this is the diagram I show most of the times. I'm talking about different stakeholders among such a measurement reporting and also for verification process of carbon emissions. So on the top will definitely be the government who doing the charge and to have the overall like CPA, the Carbon Pricing Act, the Design of Regulation Act. So from the bottom left is about the taxable facilities, which means the company itself. And from the right side is actually the verifier or the auditor is the company like us, the PIC company. So actually you can see the different relationship I've explained in the table. So between the NEA and taxable facilities, they will just taking the money or taking the tax from you. But we actually act as the verifier, right? We help the NEA to do such a verification process. So these are kind of things. But actually you also can think about things reversely. So NEA is actually working together with EDB. So it means that EDB will still give some grant for your decarbonization project as well. So we, as a verifier, we also can become the validator for the company to seek for our endorsement to conduct such a decarbonization project. So this is a very interesting, the reverse way that different parties can do for each other. Yeah. So then we just go through what is the monitoring plan. So this one is as what you do while you're drafting your emission report, right? You will definitely go to identify the emission resource. And then you will go to a bit detail about what is the emission stream, like for example, different process, different department, or even different like section, how the different like manufacturing or production is being run, right? Then after that will be your select the method to use. It's either a calculation method or like is a kind of like material balance or direct measurement as well. And then finally we'll go to identify the GHG, the greenhouse gas to be reported, for example, like 7 gas as I mentioned, right? And also in next year, the F3, this gas is need to be taken into the consideration into the reckonable. And I think it's a potential risk for some of the company as well. So here is just a big reminder about that. Then following will be the diagram as well. So is the flow is a detail about how the different measurement, like I just explained, right? The identification then goes to the site details. then about the different stream, and how to do a summary, a quick like quality management, so on and so forth, and then become your submission checklist. Is actually a diagram from the NEA website. And then we'll go to the emission quantification method. So it's just a quick sharing about the best industrial practice. So the qualification method is actually can be based on the calculation, can be based on the material balance, also can be based on some direct measurement. So what is calculation approach is actually based on some representative emission data from the machine or tools, and to times some conversion factor to get what is the emission. So the material balance will be some, for example, the invoice or DO, delivery order, right? You can get a number amount from there. Then the direct measurement will be some of the, for example, you got the meter, the pressure gauge, the winning scale, or different things you can have the control of the emission or the supply. So these are the three methods you can do for your quantification. And also for the selection of the tiers, as you can see from the table, so the number is higher means the tier or this method is more accurate to catch the data as well. Yeah, so means the higher tier will decrease the uncertainty definitely. So last part I think you will have the most interest in is about the decarbonization projects, which can tackle the GHG emissions. So actually in Singapore, we got different funding base like MTI, EDB, or Enterprise Singapore. For most of MTI, EDB are doing is the like big company, like big manufacturing site, even like semiconductor, for example, in the Woodland area, also in the Pasir Ris area as well, and also in the Tuas. But for Enterprise Singapore, is more regarding for private sector, it's more for the SMEs. So if you're a company doing some like supply for the chemical and gas, I mean, it's a small company-wise, you definitely can look into the Enterprise Singapore to search more grant or support as well. And also, normally the grant will be covered around like 30 to 50% of overall the project. So it will still be a very big amount of money. So other than that, still there will be some research grant and scholarship goes into the company or the university, right? So this can help the student to purchase in the study in sustainable energy, environment science, and also other related area. So some of the examples now you already can see or search from this. I mean, the market is to do some like old technology upgrade into new reduction. For example, implement some of new like abatement system, and also trying to do more or better monitoring system to capture all this emission data. So there are some reference you can take from the app. And also some material-based decarbonization is to replace some of the green, the global warming potential value is a higher one to a lower one. So these are the trend also you can see from market. You also can see the references list down below. Yeah. And also the standards to contribute such a net zero, because carbon neutral is the beginning. So the overall things we need to trigger is still to become the net zero. So still starting from the measure like ISO 14064 is for the operational of the plant. Then ISO 14067 is for the product base, the carbon footprint. Then we will move to the reduced management. For example, we're trying to identify which is the portion that we can do the saving of the carbon emission or even the energy-wise, right? And then if we really find out there is no way to do such reduce, we may consider about some offset. For example, like TSMC will buy some credit or buy some solar, like green energy from the solar panel as well. Yeah, so these are the portion that we are consider. If we really cannot make it or make the target, we can do some offsetting. And then we will do the declaration of the carbon neutral. So actually in BSI, we do some demonstration for carbon neutral. It's either to the company-wise, is carbon neutrality for company, or for the product, is for the carbon neutral product. So in the bottom right, you can see there are two kind marks. It's all like is a feature for the BSI to do such a demonstration. So it's a yearly base. Yeah, if you have interest, you can consume Derek for more details. So still going back, yeah, is an accurate conclusion for what standards can support for different ESG management. So from environment, we can see is the ISO like 14 key series, and also governments will be 37 series and 45, so on so far. So in the social will be some basic understanding, and also now we are trying to develop more standard related with some social as well. Yeah. I think, okay, we joined to the end of the sharing. So the best way to predict the future is to create it. Yeah, this is by Peter Plucker. And I think if you have any question, we can proceed to our Q&A process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yuan Zhe, right? And we will open the floor up now to Q&A, right? So if you have any questions, that you would like to ask Yuan Zhe, or even myself, you're able to type your questions in the chat box, and Yuan Zhe and I will be happy to take your questions. Right, but I think we see some questions in already, so we will, take some time to start answering a few questions. Right, so there is a question, right, on sustainability, ESG. Is it mandatory, right, imposed by countries, governments, or voluntary, right? I think Yuan Zhe has provided an answer to that. But maybe just let me add a bit of context, right? So I think specifically within the context of Singapore, right, for at least for SGX, right, they're mandating that listed companies, start sustainability reporting by year 2025, right? And they have to seek assurance by year 2027. Right, and for large non-listed companies with annual revenues of over 1 billion Singapore dollars, they will have to start reporting by 2027. Right, so this is really, some of the requirements that we are seeing at a Singapore level, right, on sustainability reporting and mandatory ESG requirements. And of course, not forgetting, right, what Yuan Zhe has already shared about Singapore's Carbon Pricing Act and carbon tax. Right, and I think Singapore is one of the first few countries in the world to implement the carbon taxation scheme, right? And it's just going to be more expensive, right, or carbon tax as the years goes by, right? So yeah, I think there are already mandatory requirements. So I think for those who's joining us in the audience, I think one of the first few steps you do have to look at is the markets you operate in, or the markets that you're exporting to, and what are the mandatory requirements when you're operating in such markets.
Okay, I'm trying to answer one question regarding for NEA carbon pricing tax. So non-compact sector refers to what type? So the compact sector is just regarding for these three. So other than these three, compact sector is all considered as non-compact sector. Yeah, so hope it clarifies. Means like if your company is not falling in any petroleum, oil and gas, right? Not falling in the chemistry, not falling in the semiconductor, it's all falling under the non-compact sector. So regarding for another question about attain the ISO 14068 certification every year, because for nowadays the ISO 14068 is still very new, because in previous like BSI we do is past 2060, because the ISO 14068 is definitely coming from our past 2060. So that one we are very, the product is very mature, so means the assurance product is very mature. But for ISO 14068, so the companies typically will go through initial assessment process. So it's actually quite same as what we do for PAS 2060. So it includes a document review, pre-audit, and then main audit to ensure the compliance with standards by ISO 14068. Because the ISO 14068 not only about for example, the emissions, like the verification process, it's also about, I just mentioned, right, it's about offset or the reduction part. So normally for the first verification procedure, the years is around like 3 years period. And after that will be like 1 year renew. This is normally how the case works. Yeah, because it also depends on how company declare about carbon neutral, so on and so forth. So it means it's either company declare their company as a carbon neutral or the product wise as a carbon neutral product. So these are the different things, but it's all falling in or under the ISO 14068. Yeah.
Thanks, Yuan Zhe. And maybe I'll just like to quickly add on, right? Because I do have a question on, what steps does, my company need to take to align with ISO 14068, the carbon neutrality standard. Right, so, really just as a quick overview, there are 4 broad steps, right? And organization does need to take, in order to align themselves to ISO 14068 carbon neutrality standard. Right. If you haven't done so, then first you need to quantify your organization's carbon footprint. Right. So you will need to assess what are the sources of emissions within your organization, right? And emissions could be scope 1, 2, and even scope 3 emissions, right? And what are the if applicable, look at is there any carbon sinks, right? The organization is operating or has ownership of. Right, so first is to quantify emissions. Second step is to come up with a carbon reduction plan. Right, so in the carbon reduction plan, there needs to be targets set for the carbon reduction plan, and you need to demonstrate that you are meeting such targets, right, as set up in your carbon reduction plan. Right, and of course, third, because it's really not feasible, I think even today, for an organization to fully reduce, right, their carbon footprint to zero. So the standard does talk about offsetting, right? And what are some of the offsetting requirements the organization needs to meet? What are some of the quality criteria that carbon credits do need to meet, right, in order to be counted towards an offset? Then I think the last part of the standard talks about requirements in declaration, right, of your organization's carbon neutrality status. So yeah, just 4 broad steps, right, in order for you to start aligning yourselves to the carbon neutrality standard. But what I encourage you to do, of course, is to purchase a copy of the standard, right? It doesn't cost too much, right? Just at a very high level, go through what are the requirements of ISO 14068. And I think, the initial read will give you a good enough idea on, what steps you may need to take in order to move towards carbon neutrality. Right. Yep, so just a quick summary of the ISO 14068 standard. And I think let's move on to the next question, because I do see a question on carbon tax calculation and how is it charged to companies. So Yuanzi, you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So normally the carbon tax calculator still will be done by the company itself. Means like the company will have their own GHG manager. So it's actually more like a contact window in between your company and also for for example, like NEA or us, like PIC company, who are doing or conduct such a verification. So means all these calculations shall be done or shall be performed within your company-wise. You need to generate such a GHG report. And then we, as the verification body, we need to verify such report whether it's aligned with the NEA standard. And we need to endorse or to check whether this emission amount is actually as what described. So it means we need to look into your process of your manufacturing as well, and to understand what the different scope or different gases may come from your production. So how the money charge or the tax charge to the company normally will go through a gyro is a payment in between you and NEA. It's such a, gyro agreement you sign with the NEA. Yeah. And also another question I think is also related with this is regarding for the independent reviewer or like GHG lead verifier. So normally there won't be any like independent verifier. So still you need to together as a team. So you need to have your independent reviewer or like the lead verifier, and also the independent reviewer is the two different persons. And also the team will be, I think, at least 3 to 4 people to conduct other things. And also the different scheme you need to also get prepared. So these are very detailed things. If you really want to have such a verification team, you can conduct more with NEA-wise. But for independent person, it doesn't make sense to do such a job. Yeah.
Right. And I think while at it, I think there's a question for you, Yuanzi, on the carbon tax payable for a company in Singapore. I think, for example, if the company has 1 billion in revenue, but I believe, right, the carbon tax is payable on reckonable emissions, right? So as long as you're emitting more than 25,000 tons of CO2 equivalent of reckonable emissions every year, then you are subject to the carbon tax. But yeah, I think Yuanzi, maybe just give us, your thoughts on this, please.
Okay. So because actually for Singapore recently, the Carbon Pricing Act is still based on your activities. So it means like it depends on what is the process or the different emission from a different I mean, the production-wise of your company. It doesn't about the spend based on the money you earn or the cost goes, right? So still, I mean, for the verification process or for NEA declaration process, you will need to look into what is your company is doing. For example, I'm an investment company. I also can earn like 1 billion or 1 million, right? The revenue. But your companies do nothing about manufacturing. You don't have any emission like the 7 gases, right? So it doesn't make sense for you to pay such a, I mean, carbon price to the NEA or carbon tax to NEA or the government. But actually, I understand what your point is because your company may have some upstream and downstream. You've got different supplier to conduct the different activities for you, right? So for that part, is actually more should goes into ISO 14064. So they will look into your either is the financial control or operational control of the different companies you invest in. So it's the different things. Because for Singapore Carbon Pricing Act is very clear cut. It's regarding for your production or manufacturing process. So it's more like operation understanding of your emission from the site. So this is the different part. Yeah.
Thank you, Yuan-Zhe. Right, and I have a question. Maybe I'll take this one on. Right, regarding a waste management company attaining ISO 14068 certification. Right, is it applicable for example a waste management company, versus company that is in the manufacturing sector? Right, so just a quick answer on this one, right? Because ISO 14068 is sector agnostic, right? So whether you are, in the manufacturing industry or whether you are operating in waste management, right, software as a service, banking and finance, or built environment, healthcare sector, this standard is applicable, right, to companies in all sectors, right? And companies, whether it's large multinational companies or even like small business, you are able to use ISO 14068, right, as a yardstick and best practice standard, right, in order to move your company towards carbon neutrality. Yeah, so really the standard is sector agnostic, right, and it's also company size agnostic.
Yeah, and also, for example, like BSI, although it's not, I mean, doing any waste or it's just a kind of like office or doing such a verification process, right? Because we also can declare us as a, I mean, carbon neutral company as well. So it doesn't related, it's all regarding for manufacturing. Yeah, it still can be like normal office, like also investment. So these are different scope of the operational on the company itself, but still it can declare as well. Yeah, so it doesn't always goes into the manufacturing. Yeah.
Thanks, Yuan-Zhe. Okay, let's take one last question. And then, of course, for those who's joining us this morning, do stay on the webinar because we have a couple of poll questions for you. Right. So yeah, I think a final question, what are some of the courses or training support available, right? If, you are a person, you're looking to help your organizations to reduce carbon emissions. Right, so absolutely right. BSI, we do have a wide range of training courses, right? Whether it's ISO 14001 environmental management or ISO 50001, which is the standard on energy management, right? You are able to use these standards, right, and identify opportunities to reduce your organization's carbon emissions. We conduct also training on ISO 14064, which is a standard to quantify your organization's carbon footprint. Because of course, before you look at reductions, you need to first quantify and you need to establish a baseline of carbon emissions for your organization, right? Before you look at reduction efforts. We also conduct training on ISO 14067, which is a standard on quantifying product carbon footprint. And of course, the ISO 14068 standard on carbon neutrality. So you can start to look at establishing carbon management plan, start to set targets for your organization's carbon reduction. Right. So yeah, absolutely, BSI, we can support by training, some of the key members of staff in the company as a start, yeah, in your sustainability journey. Right. So once again, thanks everybody, and we will be ending today's webinar session. Right. have a great day ahead. Right, speak soon. Thank you.